With WVU's second commitment of the 2024 recruiting class, Neal Brown has continued his tradition of locking down the top prospects inside the state of West Virginia. Let's go. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Jordan Cruz back here with the Country Roads webcast. And before I get into this video, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder. If you would do us a favor, hit that little thumbs up button right down there below the Country Roads webcast channel name on this video. Give us a thumbs up. It'll really help not only this video's performance, but future videos performances here on the channel as well. And if you're a WVU fan, be sure hit the subscribe button. Helps us and it helps you as it helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's get into it. As I mentioned in the opening, Neal Brown continuing to lock down the state of West Virginia, landing the top prospects in the state year after year since he came on. More on that here in a bit. But this year in this recruiting class, a top 2 player in the state of West Virginia, depending on which recruiting service you're looking at, is wide receiver Keyshawn Robinson, and he committed to the Mountaineers this week, becoming the second verbal commitment of the 2024 West Virginia football recruiting class, as you can see here detailed in this article on WV Sports Now by Ethan Bach, which showcases Keyshawn Robinson's announcement of his commitment to West Virginia, as you see the graphic there and his announcement. And if you want to follow Keyshawn Robinson on social media, then you can find him on Twitter at Keyshawn Robin 17. As far as his stats, last season, 24 catches for 404 yards during his junior season, on which he also added 4 receiving touchdowns there. And he actually had even better stats than that the season prior there in his sophomore season. So hopefully here in his senior season, he really has an explosive season leading into the 2024 class there, where he will join the West Virginia football team heading into that offseason here a year away now. But he becomes the second member of West Virginia's football recruiting class. But more importantly, he is a top 2 player in the state of West Virginia, which yet again means Neal Brown has locked down one of the top prospects in the state, something he has done every year since he's been here for a full recruiting cycle. And let me show you guys exactly what I mean as I show you the top recruits in the state of West Virginia since Neal Brown's first full recruiting class back in 2020, and show you that West Virginia has locked down at least one of the top 2 prospects in the state of West Virginia every year since Neal Brown took over. All right, so as I stated, 2020 was Neal Brown's first year recruiting at West Virginia, as he came in late in 2019. He even tried in that offseason to lock down some in-state prospects in Darnell Wright, who ended up going to Tennessee. They went all out to get him and Doug Nestor. Both of those 2 players ended up going elsewhere. Darnell Wright to Tennessee and Doug Nestor, of course, to Virginia Tech, as we know, but now ending up back at West Virginia. So that relationship at least paid off that Neal Brown developed in 2019. Although with how late he got in 2019, wasn't able to secure a commitment from either Darnell Wright or Doug Nestor that year. But he showed, and he mentioned in his opening press conference when he was hired at West Virginia, that he wanted to lock down the top prospects inside the state. And he showed that he meant business in his very first full recruiting class, as you see here, back in 2020, locking down the top 2 recruits in the state that season, Sean Martin on the defensive side and Zach Frazier on the offense. And funny enough, arguably here we are a few years later heading into the 2023 West Virginia football season, and probably the top player on West Virginia's football team is Zach Frazier, and arguably the top player on West Virginia's defense and the defensive leader this year, and certainly the leader along the defensive line will probably be Sean Martin. So Neal Brown's in-state recruiting certainly paying off with that 2020 recruiting class, but it didn't stop there. As I said, Neal Brown continued to dominate in-state recruiting since he came along. Let's flash forward to the next recruiting class here. Take a look at 2021. All right, as you can see here, 2021, more of the same yet again, landing 2 of the state's top 3 prospects, right? And funny enough, yet again, Zakai Lawton, who was the number 2 prospect in the state in 2021, ended up going to Cincinnati. Guess who he plays for now? That's right, the West Virginia Mountaineers, as many may know, transferred in last offseason, will probably be a factor in a reserve role along the defensive line for the Mountaineers this season. All 3 of these players are currently on the roster. Bryce Biggs could be a potential reserve offensive lineman. again. And we know Wyatt Milam is the team's starting left tackle starting last season. He's transitioned over from where he played right tackle in his true freshman season, where he was a freshman All-American. So yet again, Neal Brown's in-state recruiting paying off, landing Wyatt Milam. So there you go. In Neal Brown's first 2 recruiting classes at WVU, landed what will be 2 starting linemen across the offensive line this season, and they have been there for the past 2 seasons for the Mountaineers. So locking down the state really played a factor for Neal Brown and really just paid dividends when it comes to West Virginia's success along the offensive line. Let's look again at what Neal Brown did with the 2022 in-state recruiting. All right, now moving on to 2022, obviously this class didn't pay off as much for Neal Brown in West Virginia. However, you can't knock the fact that yet again he landed the #1 player in the state of West Virginia in Corbin Page, who we now know, of course, has since transferred, and really none of these here on this list will play for West Virginia this upcoming season. However, Neal Brown did do what he said he was going to do when he came here, and that's lock down the top talent in the state, and he did do that again in 2022, landing the top recruit in the state in Corbin Page. But now let's move ahead and look at last year's recruiting class, the most recent complete one for West Virginia here with the 2023 class. And then here we are, as I said, most recently, 2023, Noah Braham, not yet on campus for the Mountaineers, but will play a role in the future. We know a legacy player, the son of an all-time great in Rich Braham along the West Virginia offensive line. Noah Braham listed as a tight end, listed as an athlete by some recruiting services. We know West Virginia does have 2 fullbacks on the roster now. They're going to maybe use fullbacks and tight ends. So Noah Braham could potentially factor into either one of those roles. And who knows, maybe he could grow into an offensive lineman like his father as well. So I think he has a bright future in Morgantown. But you see yet again, Neal Brown locking down one of the top 2 recruits in the state in 2023, which brings us to the upcoming West Virginia football recruiting class, and of course the subject of this video in Keyshawn Robinson. Let's take a look at the 2024 top recruits in the state of West Virginia. All right, here we are, 2024, and as you can see, Neal Brown yet again locking down one of the top 2 recruits in the state of West Virginia with the subject of this video, wide receiver Keyshawn Robinson, the 5'11", 175-pound, 3-star recruit committing to the Mountaineers today, and West Virginia locks him down, listed as the #2 recruit in the state of West Virginia here on 247 Sports, but according to some services, he's actually the top recruit in the state of West Virginia. So West Virginia getting a good start on the 2024 class, locking down yet another in-state player like they have done every year throughout this coaching staff's regime and through Neal Brown's tenure here in Morgantown. One of the positive things you can say here, of course, has been his recruiting, and more specifically, of course, his in-state recruiting. So let's look here at the 2024 class and the 2 commits that West Virginia has locked down currently. And as you can see here in West Virginia's 2024 class, as far as hard verbal commits, West Virginia has 2, of course, Keyshawn Robinson, the subject of this video. And then in addition to him, they already had Richard Wink James, a defensive lineman from New Jersey, another 3-star recruit already in the fold. So the 2024 class currently showcasing 2 players, one on offense, one on defense, a wide receiver and a defensive lineman, Keyshawn Robinson and Richard James, respectively, better known as Wink James. And then, of course, Keyshawn Robinson, our in-state wide receiver, the subject of this video, being the most recent of the 2 commits. That puts the West Virginia 2024 recruiting class to its current size of 2 commits. So there you have it, Mountaineer Nation. Neal Brown and the West Virginia football coaching staff gaining a commitment from one of the top players in the state of West Virginia. Regardless of your feelings on this staff in general, you got to love the way that they've been able to handle the in-state recruiting. But I would love to hear your thoughts on how you feel about that. Drop it down in the comments below, whether it be your thoughts on their in-state recruiting during their time here or on the commitment of Keyshawn Robinson, the latest addition to the 2024 West Virginia football recruiting class. I'd love to hear your opinions on either one. Drop it in the comments there. We appreciate the interaction as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.